Please welcome producers Sara Murphy, Alana Haim, and writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson. And I should tell you that Alana was backstage. She's like, wow, no, I played in this venue.
I did, and it was a great show.
Well, welcome. What are you looking at, Paul?
I'm looking at this theater, which is like my dream come true, really, because we don't have many of these left, and whenever I get in one, I really get choked up and get excited that they still exist, and it's amazing, really. Yeah.
And we use it, and I told you there's an organ that comes here in all those houses.
Yeah.
You know, the pipes of the organ are all around us. It's pretty spectacular.
Sure is.
Yeah. So, Paul, last night I mentioned that this script of yours is so tightly structured, but critics and audiences say, "Oh, this is so loose and meandering." You know, how do you feel when you hear people describe the film, knowing that you structured everything so tightly?
Well, yeah, you know, it's like when your mom puts food in front of you and you eat it, she just wants it to be delicious, you know, but she also wants you to know, like, how much hard work she put into it, right? She's like, so it's funny because it's like the trick. You're supposed to, you know, I suppose at its best, a film can feel like simple or like events are just happening without an author kind of guiding it, but at the same time, an audience wants to be taken through something with purpose. So I think the nature of the story, it does freewheel a little bit, and I think the nature of the story is determined by the characters, and the character of Gary has the attention span of a 16-year-old, you know? So his interests they're intense, but they're very quick. And she's no better, you know? I mean, she's just as immature as he is. So they're both, the energy of the two of them kind of throttles you through, and you're never quite sure where they're gonna go. It's just like trying to hold on to a fish. They're like, what, you know, they're slippery. But that's I think the youth of it.
Correct. Alana, in your career plans and dreams, did you have star in a Paul Thomas Anderson film?
No, I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be sitting here talking about this film, being in a film, being in a movie. I'm really happy. I don't know what left turn I took to get here, but I'm very happy I did.
How did it feel when he approached you and said, "I've written a part for you, I want you to be the lead in my film"?
I thought I was hallucinating. I was like, well, what is going on? But obviously I was so excited, and I'm still so excited. I mean, hearing the end credits music is still, it's crazy that I was even in this movie. It really hasn't hit yet. But I was incredibly excited, and I was ready to go. I wanted to do it so badly.
Sara, you produce a film that is carried by two people who have basically never acted before. How did you feel about that? Nervous? Total trust in Paul's instincts?
Yeah, I think total trust in Paul. I mean, I think, I don't really want to say this out loud, but he's not often wrong. And so I think he had, you know, instincts towards Alana always, and then when he brought up Cooper, it felt scary and exciting, and right.
Paul, I've seen the film a few times now. The sound design is probably one of the most beautiful sound designs I've heard in a long time, and it's so unique. Would you mind talking about that?
Thank you for saying that, because yeah, films that, usually the films that sort of people talk about sound design are usually sort of bigger blockbuster things. They're sort of complicated sound effects for creatures and airplanes and things like that. But, you know, the joy of doing a film like this is that you have a lot of old cars, a lot of car radios, but essentially you have people talking to each other. So the sound of the film is really dependent upon the source, which is recording the dialogue on camera at that moment and making sure you have it really well done, because trying to recreate performances after the fact when you're looping, you know, when you sometimes something's too loud and you can't hear the dialogue, it's critical for us. We're sort of like to make sure you're really getting that performance the first time. And then you have the great joy of going through the process of applying the music to the film, which in a film taking place at this time, you have this great opportunity for wonderful songs that, you know, that hopefully things that we do know and hopefully things that we don't know. But, you know, living where we all live here in California, you know, it's car culture, so you constantly have the music and the sound effects of our lives are the things that we heard in the radio, the things that, you know, are coming out of the different car engines of that time. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the real perks of the job is designing the sound for the film. Yeah.
Alana, you have so many wonderful moments. One sticks out, the one right outside your house after the Shabbat dinner, and you yell, "What does your penis look like?" You know, can you tell us about that scene?
Oh, in front of all these people, really? Funny enough, that was not written in the script. That came from my brain.
He just finished saying that everything was so structured.
Oh, yeah, that unfortunately was not. It's funny, at that point in the film, what was supposed to happen was I was supposed to lose this battle and feel very sad and vulnerable and turn to my boyfriend Lance and just almost cry and say, how could you do that to my dad? That's my dad. That's my dad. And we shot it, and Paul would say action, and this rage would come over me, because that actually happened. My sister had brought an atheist to Passover dinner in my life. So I actually lived that part of the movie in real life years ago. So when Paul said action, this rage would come over, because I remember feeling rage toward this person, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't lose. I just couldn't do it. And then finally I turned to Paul and said, "Can I try something?" And he said yes, and I didn't tell anybody, obviously, what I was doing, because I never told anybody what I was going to do. And I walked out, I dropped Lance at his car, and I said, "What does your penis look like?" And his reaction was a normal reaction to that question, like, "What?" And I said, "What does your penis look like?" And he said, "Normal." And I said, "Is it circumcised?" And he said, "Yes." And then I said, "You're a fucking Jew." And I walked in, and everyone laughed. And then we're like, okay, we got it. We can move on. That's how it went. But, I mean, I'm lucky to have... Oh, thank you. Thank you. A penis joke always gets us an applause. But, no, I'm very lucky that I had a director that really did let me run free. And all of my weird and crazy ideas, we always tried them out. And I'm very thankful.
Sara, you guys made this movie during COVID. Can you tell us how that process was?
I mean, I think it was similar to everybody's process. It was a lot of learning systems, creating systems, adapting, constantly being scared. It was kind of everybody's first time back to work, because we were at one of the first productions to go. So it was making sure everybody felt safe, but a lot of that was, you know, in how Paul originally built this thing, which is very familial. I mean, all of these are his friends, and his kids' friends, and his kids' friends' parents, and so it felt like we were creating something sort of safe and therefore exciting and able to be free and mobile. But no, it was funny, because I think at the time, the question going around was like, is this a movie that needs to get made during COVID? And you're like, well, I mean, I don't know, because it has so many moving parts. It's all a location. There's no stage work. There's tons of extras every day. And I think at some point, like, yes, because it brought so many people out and so many people together. But I think at the end of it, the movie that came out at the end of the pandemic was this, which I think was what everybody needed. So glad we did it.
Yeah. Paul, you cast not only Alana, but you cast her entire family, including her dad and mom. You also cast Cooper Hoffman, and there's other family members throughout, the filming. Can you tell us the logic behind that?
Well, it's like, I think there's no logic. It's just this natural extension of like, if you were lucky enough to have what I have, you would do the same thing. I mean, right in front of my face, I had this. And my family, my wife and my children were performers. They're incredible. And all their friends, it was like, it just is this natural extension of how we all kind of live. And it's hard to describe as anything other than this is what we're doing. This is the way to live, to attack this and be together and make this project together. It seems impossible to think of it any other way now. And the joy of working together, I suppose that there was a pitfall possibly of that you all went and tried to create this great atmosphere, and then you all got there and you were miserable and you didn't have a good time, but we had a wonderful time. It was meant to be a summer project. We were meant to shoot it in the summer before the pandemic started. And then it became this wonderful double down on our ability to all see each other, to be with each other, to protect each other, to have a mission to accomplish each day, and to keep each other safe. And the amazing thing that ended up happening too, we were talking last night with Kenneth Branagh about this, because he had a very similar situation, was that many of the first actors in the film got to experience the perfect way to make a film, which was a complete immersion in it and complete concentration. There's no distractions on the weekend. You're not going anywhere at night. You're just, the only thing that you're doing for 60 days is waking up, making this film, going home, going to sleep, waking up the next day and making the film. There's no other life beyond it, which is how it should be. That's really how it should be. But it becomes hard. Real life intervenes, and it's easy to lose your concentration. But that's what ended up happening. It was really kind of a wonderful time for all of us, and we're just lucky enough to have a record of it.
Alana, I want to ask you about the truck sequence. I'm blown away by that sequence because you actually were doing the driving yourself. You learned to stick shift, and then on top of that, there's a psychological shift in her. The tone shifts that she realizes after she ends up what's happened. Tell us about the fact that not only were you have to deal with the acting of the scene, but then you're doing the stick shift driving in that truck.
Oh yeah, and I'm very grateful for it. I mean, I learned so much. That was our first week of shooting, was when I did all the truck stunts, which was a lot. But I think that part is incredibly important in the movie, because you see Gary and he's so excited and he thinks that he just went on this epic roller coaster and it was fun, and he looks at me like, oh, you had your cool. But really that's the first time inside where Alana goes, oh my God, like I could have died and I could have killed everybody. And it's that first time where she goes, oh, because when you're young, when you're 15, you feel invincible. You feel like no matter how, half the things that I did when I was 15, it's crazy. You think that you're just going to live forever. And I think that's the first time that Alana realizes, oh, you are at a different point in your life. I need to get my life together. I really need to do that. And she's sitting there and she's realizing all these things so quickly. And that's such a pivotal point in her character.
Mm-hmm. And the stick shift and downhill, that was a breeze for you.
It was not a breeze. It was actually really terrifying, but in a great way. I mean, I love a new challenge. I love learning new things, and I mean, I say it all the time. If I showed up to set and Paul said, you're going to jump off this building, I would have done it in a heartbeat. I would have done it with bells on. So
I just want to say, when all those guys talk about like doing their own stunts and shit like that, they've all got wires and safety pads and all that stuff. Like, don't believe that. She really drove that 5-ton truck down that hill, which is very... which is very unsafe and unadvisable, and you really shouldn't try that at home.
I was going to say, we had a stunt team, we had safety,
yes,
we had
it was very safe. It was very safe. I felt very safe.
I love that, Sara. You have to
Thank you,
make
Sara.
sure that people know.
It was legal.
Paul, working with Sean Penn, his voice, how did you guys work on, like, his voice is lower, right?
His voice is lower. Working with Sean Penn is a dream come true. I wanted to work with Sean Penn, I suppose, like any other person, ever since I saw Jeff Spicoli walk into Mr. Hand's classroom, It was like, one of these, that's like, so it's been a dream, and this was finally this opportunity that we had. And the only thing that I did was share the inspiration with William Holden, was one of my favorite actors, and William Holden had a fantastic voice. I didn't have a conversation with Sean at all about doing a voice or anything else. I just trusted what he was going to do. He showed up, he got his haircut, he sat down, and started talking like that, and I thought, good choice, and that was it. And, I've worked with so many different actors, and Sean has a reputation, and I think over the years, probably when he was younger, he certainly liked to stay in character and mess around and do all that kind of stuff. But at this point in his life, he was wonderful to work with, because he goes from having a conversation with you right here, and he's talking with the crew or whatever it was, and then action, and he goes, like right there. He's kind of mastered his skill in such a way where he can just dive right into it immediately. That was one of the joys of my career, and I think Alana's career so far as well, is, we spent about 5 or 6 days with Sean Penn and Tom Waits at that restaurant, and it was pretty magical working with the two of them.
Best days of my life.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic scene. Alana, was it in the script, all that running that you have to do, and you're doing it in flats?
No.
Sometimes in flats, but most of the time I was in heels, actually. These like chunky heels that were very hard to run in. Anytime Cooper complained, I'd be like, I'm wearing these shoes, you're wearing sneakers, get it together. No, I mean, the running was, again, such an important motif in this movie. I mean, we're constantly running. We're running away from each other. We're running towards each other. It depicts so much emotion by not saying anything. And it really did help me get into character. I mean, there were times that we would just run before a scene, because if you're so out of breath, you're not thinking about the lines. You're just thinking about, you're way more present. And I love all the running. I mean, during it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was very hard. But seeing it, I mean, it's such an incredible action and movement. It's beautiful.
And soundtrack, Sara, is so essential for this movie. Incredible soundtrack. Once he handed you his playlist, was it difficult for you to get permission to all this songs?
No. Well, no. I would say it was terrifying getting that playlist. But no, I mean, I think at that point, the film had found its place and the music was all incorporated in it. I don't think there was ever a question about whether it was right or wrong or whether we were going to try to replace it. It was like, let's get it.
Paul, the cinematography you did, you and your colleague, tell us about why did you have to have 2 cinematographers, including yourself in it? It's beautiful cinematography.
Thank you. Well, it started a bunch of years ago, and it really came to fruition with all these smaller projects that we do with Alana and her sisters, Michael Bauman, who's a great gaffer, who I'd worked with for a number of years. We just started doing it together. We just sort of, we really enjoyed collaborating together, and we felt the strength to do it as a team. And so the first time we did it was on Phantom Thread, and that was it worked. It was a very successful collaboration, really, between Michael and I and the camera operator, first assistant camera, and our grip, Jeff Kunkel. So it's kind of, the two of us get credit because of the union rules, but really it's a five-headed monster when it comes to the cinematography of the film. You know, I'm like, you know, I get the kind of deciding vote, but it would be a mistake to kind of consider me really the cinematographer. It's a very socialist environment around the set when it comes to that job, and it's great because we're all. Yeah, you know, we don't have to try and talk a cranky cinematographer into anything. You know, we just kind of get on with it ourselves, and it's really it's a wonderful way of working, and I think we'll keep doing it. Yeah, you know, it's funny. There's always you see credits on films, and it's tricky because at its best, a film that's the best part of making a film, even if it turns out to be a turkey. If you've had a collaboration with people that you love, it's the reason why you do it. And so sometimes everybody's got a title, but I don't know, hopefully at its best, it all gets a bit liquidy, you know, that nobody feels precious about their job, and they feel open to anybody helping with their job, or that's really when you know you're working with people that you love and respect, that no one's precious about anything, and it's all a collaboration. Good ideas come from everywhere, and everybody supports each other. Yeah.
And when did you decide that to be inspired by Gary's, you know, who's a real live person,
yeah,
and to make him the center of your film?
Well, I decided, you know, I think I just had I'd had all these stories that this real person in my life, Gary Getzman, who's the model for Gary's character, I had been filling myself up with them for years and years. I've known him for about 20 years through Jonathan Demme. And when Jonathan passed away in 2018, I started spending a lot more time with Gary. And that, right on the heels of Phantom Thread, and spending this time with Gary, and spending all this time with Alana, it just became a story to tell that really seemed joyous and right at my fingertips and important to do. That's my memory of how it all went down.
Mm-hmm. Tim Matheson
Yeah.
lived here in Santa Barbara, a good friend of the festival, and
Yeah.
you know, and he's one of the characters.
Tim Matheson is a good friend of Gary's because they were in Yours, Mine, and Ours with Lucille Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucille Ball, yeah. Tim Matheson's big. There's a big tall kid with a buzz cut.
Right.
Yeah, he had a buzz cut when all the other kids had long hair because he was in the ROTC, and they had to go to New York to promote Yours, Mine, and Ours, and the Ed Sullivan Show. So all the kids went, Gary and all these 18 kids, or there's 17 of them, and there was one missing, it was Tim Matheson. And Tim Matheson was in ROTC down in San Diego, and Lucille Ball said, well, we gotta have Tim. I said, we can't, he's in training, he's in the Marines, in 1968, right? And she said, that's bullshit. And she called Bob Hope. She said, Bob, I need to get me Timmy Matheson out of ROTC training. So guy knocked in the middle of the night on Tim Matheson's door and said, Matheson, you're getting on an airplane. He got on they put him on a commercial flight. He had no idea where he was going in the middle of the night. And they flew him to the Ed Sullivan Show because Lucille Ball called Bob Hope and said so. That's a true story. It's a long one, but it was a good one.
Yeah. Alana, how was it like working with your family in the film, and especially yelling at your dad?
Scary. Honestly, it's scarier to yell at my dad than to drive that truck, let me tell you. I had never screamed at my dad like that in my life. It was so fun. I mean, imagine we were in these times where I couldn't see my family, and I'm so close to my family. I work with my family. I love my family. They're the closest people in my life, and then I couldn't see them for a very long time. And then all of a sudden we're shooting this scene and I see my dad walk out in a bathrobe and my mom has 70s, period hair, and my sisters are there. I mean, it was just such a joyful day. I mean, honestly, I felt bad for Skylar Gisanda, who played Lance. I was like, I had met him maybe 24 hours before that day, and I had to give him like a debrief, like, you're gonna meet my parents and my sisters. You've never met them before. They're crazy. I'm really sorry. I really hope they don't embarrass me. But here we go. But it was great. I mean, my dad is the funniest person on the planet, and pretty much all of that dialogue is from my dad's brain. I mean, he was just so funny, and I always have to remind myself, like, my dad had never been in front of a camera before. I had worked with Paul on music videos, and so had my siblings, and both my parents had never been anywhere close to a movie camera, and my dad did that. I mean, it's shocking. It's so great. It's amazing.
That's wonderful. And Paul, you've mentioned that American Graffiti influenced you, and
I agree.
one person loves American Graffiti. And the cinematography reminds us of American Graffiti, and of course, although it's set in San Francisco, we're in the San Fernando Valley. Can you tell us about the influence of American?
You and I love American Graffiti. And it's set in Modesto, and Modesto looks a lot like the San Fernando Valley. So growing up, I thought it was the San Fernando Valley. I didn't know the difference.
I thought American Graffiti was San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, it's kids in cars and cruising around looking for trouble or trying to find the answers to life before they graduate high school. It all kind of spoke to me. But the thing about American Graffiti that's so wonderful that we tried to steal is that this is a compliment. It feels cheap, but it feels like a movie. In other words, it was a movie that felt like made you feel like, I could do this. I could make this. There's something so homemade about it. It felt like there was one light on the set, which in fact, when you look into it, there were two. But it was a CinemaScope movie, which somehow felt like it was really happening, but it was also, it was entertaining and it was funny and it was, clocked in at 90 minutes, but it sort of encompassed a lot of stuff and then not much at all. So there's something so wonderful about it, and obviously as movies about this years in one's life go, it's lasted the test of time. It certainly holds up as one of the best, if not the best. So it's, when you go to make a film that has a distant cousin, you want to go back and you want to revisit it and think, how did they do it? And it's great to revisit films that you love, and even if you've done it for a number of years like I have, you still look at it and you go, well, the magic is still there. I'm still not quite sure how they pulled it off. And it's wonderful to see a cast of people that that is their first films, first or second films. And that's very, very much what we had as well.
I think about when Alana was talking about that magical moment about the penis scene that wasn't planned, but it happened. And, the opening moment in American Graffiti with the scooter, that it's an accident, but the actor just moves on from it.
Well, it's important with young actors. You remember that scene. We remember that scene. With Charles Martin Smith. He crashes his scooter into a newspaper stand. And I don't know if anybody remembers, but it's this fantastic moment. And it's in the film. It's the first shot of the film. And they don't cut right afterwards. It keeps going. And I showed it to all the young kids in the movie. And I said, this is a lesson. If anything happens, we're trying to capture it. Don't stop and turn and look at me and give up, to behave and be present in the moment, and don't let anything fool you up. And it was great. They ended up being able to see American Graffiti for the first time and love it. So I said, we're trying to do as good as that, and we're trying to do as good as Fast Times. And if we do that, we'll be all right. We can try.
I think you guys accomplished that. And Sara, how does it feel to be Oscar nominated, Best Picture?
Oh, thank you. It's pretty rad. It feels great. It feels good. I think it's I don't know. There's so many incredible films this year, and you feel it's very lucky to be a part of that, and also to have made it with the people that you love working with and only want to work with. And yeah, I feel very grateful.
Well, Paul, Alana, Sara, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
It's always good to be
congratulations.
here. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.